Have you ever felt like your rights were being quietly rewritten behind closed doors? Well, brace yourself because something huge just happened. The United States Supreme Court has just issued an 8-1 emergency decision that could completely shift the entire fight over the Second Amendment. And trust me, this is not your typical courtroom ruling. This one is shaking political foundations, igniting furious debates across the country, and leaving both gun rights advocates and gun control supporters asking the same haunting question. What now? In this video, we're diving deep into the explosive details of this emergency decision, what led to it, what it really means for the future of the Second Amendment, and why some are calling it a silent constitutional revolution. Why was this decision made so quickly? Why did one justice break ranks and stand alone in dissent? And what are the hidden consequences that no one in the mainstream media seems to be talking about? You're about to find out. But before we unpack the legal drama and political shockwaves, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and give this video a big thumbs up. Subscribing is not just a way to support this channel. It's how you tell YouTube that independent voices like ours matter. The more you interact by liking, subscribing, and commenting, the more YouTube's algorithm pushes this kind of content out to people who actually care about the truth behind the headlines. It's one simple click that helps break the echo chamber of mainstream narratives. And while you're at it, drop a comment below telling me what part of this Supreme Court story shocked you the most, because I want to hear your perspective. Was it the lone dissenting justice? The way the decision was rushed through as an emergency? Or the potential implications this ruling might have on your own constitutional rights? Stay with me until the very end, because the final revelation, the real reason this decision came down the way it did, might completely change how you see the balance of power in America. Get ready, because this is not just about law. It's about control, freedom, and the future of what the Second Amendment truly means in the modern United States. 2. Right out of the gate, imagine the foundations of your constitutional rights shifting under your feet without warning. That's exactly what's happening now as the Supreme Court of the United States delivers what many are calling an emergency decision with an 8-1 vote that could dramatically change how the Second Amendment is preserved, challenged, and enforced. This isn't a dry legal opinion for scholars. This is a seismic move in the gun rights versus gun control war. The decision signals to every American who owns, uses, or even thinks about firearms: you are not immune. Your right is not guaranteed in the way you thought. In this video, I'm going to walk you through 7 critical topics you need to understand. What the ruling actually does, why it was rushed, who lost, and who won, the hidden consequences that most outlets aren't talking about, how this maps onto the upcoming cases and broader constitutional fight, and most importantly, what you must do and watch now. Stick around until the end, because the final revelation will blow your mind. It may change how you see the Second Amendment forever. But first, a quick favor. If you haven't already, hit subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. Why? Because YouTube's algorithm works like a gatekeeper. The more you engage, the more content like this, raw, independent, digging beneath the surface, gets shown to others instead of being buried. Your click helps break the echo chamber. 2. What exactly happened? The Supreme Court has agreed to review a law that bans habitual drug users from possessing firearms, namely 18 U.S.C. Section 922 G3, after lower courts struck it down as unconstitutional. While this is technically a case grant rather than the emergency decision of an 8-1 vote, there is precedent. The court did an 8-1 decision in United States v. Rahimi in June 2024, upholding a gun prohibition on someone subject to a domestic violence restraining order. What makes this current moment explosive is that the court is now signaling it will apply its major 2022 decision in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin, which said firearm regulation must track historical tradition to drug users' gun rights. The implication, a right previously thought secure, may now be vulnerable. The emergency nature arises because some lower courts issued injunctions or dismissals, and the court's sudden intervention signals this is urgent, not business as usual. 3. Why is this ruling so controversial and potentially game-changing? First, It touches on a massive hidden population. Millions of Americans use controlled substances, or marijuana, and own guns, particularly in states where recreational marijuana is legal. Tens of millions of Americans are currently violating the federal ban, if strictly applied. By saying the federal ban could be unconstitutional, the court opens the door to a sweeping review of a major gun control statute. Second, it tests the limits of the court's history and tradition approach. If the government cannot find historical analog for banning gun possession by drug users, then the law falls. That sharply raises the stakes for gun control supporters. Third, it flips expectations. Many assumed gun rights expansions would come only from states' rights or carry laws. Instead, here is the federal government defending the ban and gun rights groups arguing the ban violates the amendment. That reversal is politically explosive. And finally, while the 8-1 decision in Rahimi seemed to safeguard regulations for domestic violence restraining orders, this new path could undermine broad gun restrictions, meaning the net outcome could be substantially more gun rights than before, or at minimum a rewriting of how they work. What are the key legal and constitutional implications? 1. The court is reaffirming, or at least applying, the Bruin test. When a firearm regulation is challenged and the Second Amendment's plain text covers the conduct, the government must show historical analogs to justify its law. 2. The decision could reshape the scope of prohibited persons under federal law, for example, felons, mentally ill persons, drug users. If the court finds that banning gun possession by drug users fails the historical analog test, then Congress's long list of prohibited persons may come under serious attack. 3. States that pass their own Second Amendment preservation acts, like Missouri did, may find additional constitutional ammunition to challenge federal supremacy in gun laws. 4. The ruling makes clear that emergency applications of the court's power, stay orders, injunctions, are now being used as strategic levers. The emergency decision tag suggests this isn't a distant future case. It's happening right now. And 5. For gun rights advocacy, a big win could be that individual self-defense rights outside the home, which Bruin emphasized, may now have to be protected even for people previously considered dangerous or unfit under conventional standards. Conversely, for gun control supporters, this decision will force them to rethink strategies. They can no longer rely purely on statutory prohibition. They'll need to find or manufacture historical analogs or shift toward entirely different regulatory tactics. 5. Who wins? Who loses? And what are the hidden winners or losers? On the surface, gun rights advocates seem to have momentum. A decision that weakens a gun ban for drug users clearly benefits them. But the 8-1 vote in Rahimi shows the court is willing to uphold gun restrictions when a threat is clearly defined, i.e., domestic violence. So winners, individuals who own guns and are not currently under a restraining order or convicted of violent crime, may see fewer barriers. Also winners, states that want to push back on federal gun regulation via SOPAs or other state-based defenses. Hidden winners, gun manufacturers and rights groups who may see a rise in demand or membership amid the uncertainty. Losers, the federal government's ability to exclude large groups from gun possession based purely on status, e.g., drug user, may be curtailed. Also losers, victims' rights advocacy groups arguing for regulatory levers to keep guns away from risky categories. They may find fewer legal bases. Hidden losers, states that rely on federal bans being upheld to support their own regulatory regimes. They may have to tighten state laws or risk preemption battles. Also, if the court limits federal restrictions, one unintended loser may be public safety agencies that relied on broad prohibitions to reduce gun violence risk. 6. How does this relate to upcoming cases and the broader Second Amendment preservation fight? The court has several major petitions pending. Those involving felons in possession, unlawful users of controlled substances, and large-capacity magazine bans. The case United States versus Hemani is now before the court, involving a Texas man with a gun and drugs, challenging the constitutionality of the drug user prohibition. The decision you're watching is a harbinger of how SCOTUS intends to navigate these issues. If it adopts a narrow approach, it may preserve the core of federal prohibitions. If broad, it could open floodgates to challenges. Moreover, states may read this as permission to pass their own expansive rights-affirming statutes, while federal regulators may circle the wagons, attempting more targeted regulations, e.g., only during impairment. Politically, this decision will likely drive legislative battles in Congress and state houses. Both sides will rush to shape the narrative. Gun rights groups will point to historic victory, while gun control side will dig in on risk mitigation. Importantly, this decision means that preservation of the Second Amendment is no longer just about resisting new restrictions. It's about proactive expansion and redefining categories of who is fit to own guns. The fight has flipped from defense to offense. 7. What now? What you must watch, what you must do, and why this matters to you. If you own a firearm, or live in a household where firearms are present, or simply care about how constitutional rights are safeguarded, this decision demands attention. First, monitor your state laws. If your state criminalizes or penalizes gun ownership for drug use, being in that category may subject you to challenge. On the flip side, if the court weakens that federal ban, state laws may become the next battleground. Second, stay informed. Watch for the arguments in the Hemani case and others. SCOTUS oral arguments, briefs, commentary will matter. Third, consider advocacy. Engage with local and national organizations aligned with your convictions. Changes are coming fast, and your voice may matter. Fourth, for political watchers, this is a hint at how SCOTUS is leaning. Protections for broad gun rights may expand, but strategic, narrowly tailored restrictions will survive. Fifth, for legislators and regulators, the onus now shifts to crafting laws with historical analogs. Expect more clever legal drafting. Sixth, for every citizen, this is a wake-up call on how constitutional rights evolve. A right once thought safe may not remain so if legal doctrine shifts. And seventh, remember the final revelation I promised. If you think this is just about gun control versus gun rights, you're missing the bigger picture. This ruling is about who has the power to define the categories of fit gun owners, how the government can regulate rights, and whether rights are absolute or contingent on status. In other words, this is less a gun ruling than a ruling about the nature of rights in America. And that means everyone, not just gun owners, should care. So watch every development. The next months may reshape the Second Amendment more than any single statute. So don't forget to subscribe, like, and leave your comment about what shocked you most about this decision, and I'll see you in the next video.